Hey, ladies and gents, welcome to another episode of Getting Random with Z.Singleton. Today I have with me Dr. Jeshana Avent Johnson, and she is a licensed psychologist and also she is a sex therapist. Yes. And she also hosts the show on KBLA 1580, which is called Let's Get Intimate. And y'all, if you haven't checked it out yet, I definitely suggest it. It's Saturday and Sundays, 5 to 7, where she actually have couples come on and they share their stories. And it's just a real chill vibe. And you get to hear a lot of what you don't realize you need to know with your relationship. Like, it's okay to get advice. So she also does sex education and does intimacy seminars. Her list goes on and on and on. And she's also an AKA.
That's right.
So today I have her on because we're in February. And of course, this is when, though intimacy happens all the time, something about February where we really get like, ooh, it's time, hearts, angels, and everything. So there's certain things that I realized last night is that I actually asked a couple of friends, like, "Hey, I got someone coming on. What you have to say? Do you have any questions or anything?" And it's interesting because it was taboo to them.
Mm,
Is I got jokes, I got
mhm,
silence. I didn't get many answers, and I was like, "This is interesting." Even though we are older,
mhm.
it's like still the same effect of, "Shh, don't talk about it.
Right,
Let's not talk about sex."
right.
And I am that person where I am comfortable to a certain point because I know off we were talking about my fears of, like, my parents and my grandmother watching this and my aunts and stuff, and so it's almost like you said, I'm feeding still into the
Yeah,
taboo instead of just being like, "Okay, this is what it is. This is who I am."
right.
So, to start it off, like, what brought you to this? I
Oh,
just
I see. That's a great question because just like you're, you know, navigating the taboos around sex and sexuality.
mhm,
I grew up in a very conservative Christian home. My mother was an evangelist.
mm,
My father was a pastor, even though I didn't grow up in a home with him. And my grandfather was a pastor. So I
mhm,
grew
mm,
up in the church, around the church. Loved my upbringing. However, we didn't talk about sex. We didn't
right.
talk about sex and sexuality. It's funny because my mom knows the work that I do, and every now and then she'll come and hear me speak, and she still says things like, I don't even know the birds and the bees story, right? And I had to like really sit down and talk to her about what exactly is the birds and bees. People think that that is just um, an analogy
Mhm,
of sex and sexuality, but it is really a story about sex and sexuality.
mhm,
And so when I got an opportunity to go to school, they had a track for multicultural psychologists.
mhm,
Health psychologist which was like, no, I'm not doing health psychology, which is funny because now it's come full circle. But
right.
then there was individuals and couples therapy track, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna
Mhm,
do couples. And when I chose couples, they also said set. You can take the sex therapy track, and I was like, sex therapy. I could learn about sex
mhm,
without getting in trouble. Now,
mm,
granted, I was married and had children
mhm,
at
mhm,
this time, and I still had that kind of thought process around sex and sexuality.
right.
But all along, because once I kind of got into this field, I had old friends remind me, like, remember when we used to have like sex talks and relationship talks? And I was like, oh yeah, I did. So apparently, this has always been in me,
Right.
but the freedom came from my ability to like learn about it and undo the discourse
Mhm.
of like church and society and family dynamics that says this is what it is.
Right. And I kinda told you too that, I think a part of it for me was I really was told, "You can't talk to
Yeah,
boys,
yeah,
you can't do any of this,
right,
and, what you looking at that dude for?" And
right,
so, like, as I got older, it was scary, like, I
yeah,
was like, "Oh," I kept feeling like I was in shock, like, "Oh,
yeah,
should I be doing
yeah,
this?" And you said the best word, curiosity.
Yeah.
not promiscuous, just it
It
was a
was, yeah,
it's
it
a
was
it's
curiosity.
curiosity.
Mhm.
Like these are things I didn't get as a child.
Right.
Like I couldn't just have those simple regular relationships
Mhm.
with the males, which is important because
Right.
how else was I supposed to learn how to
Right.
really communicate and really know how to be confident
Mhm.
and know my worth if I didn't know the opposite sex at
Right.
all.
Right.
So I experienced it the I feel the wrong way, but also I feel it was the right way because things happen the way they're supposed to happen.
Well, I would say, what if we took the value off of it, whether it's right or wrong, and just
Mhm.
say that's what it was. That's what it was. It
Right.
wasn't right or wrong. I think that our parents, our religion, our community,
Mhm.
they all have good intentions,
Mhm.
but we also know that intentions and impact are two different things.
Right.
So while my intention is to keep you safe, right,
Mhm.
the impact on you then becomes, you have this stigma around sex and sexuality,
Right.
that it goes into hiding and or shame and or guilt,
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
as we get older, that still creeps up with us. I call it a crowded bed. So even when you are allowed
Mhm.
to have sex and explore your sexuality, you do it with shame, because everybody that's in the bed with you, your mom, your dad, your pastor, your
You think about
religion,
all
like
of them.
everybody is in the bed with you. So,
Right.
you know, I don't think it is, I don't think it's wrong how they did what they did. I
Right.
think it was out of good intentions, but they
Mhm.
do have an impact on us.
So just speaking on that because I think protection sometimes also comes from experience and trauma.
Yeah.
And so for individuals with trauma, because I'm just gonna get right into it.
Hmm.
Individuals with trauma, like let's talk about partnerships.
Okay.
Because say your partner at some point had trauma and
Hmm.
your other partner, you want that intimate, you want to
Hmm.
be able to talk to them, tell them, hey, this is what I like, but you don't want to trigger them because at the end of the day, that trigger can end up closing that whole bedroom setting period
Hmm.
for a long time. So how do you address that as an individual really wanting to begin to get away from what our parents did
Hmm.
and also be yourself, be free to
Yeah.
actually get into the things that that seems so still
Hmm.
curiosity, but
Hmm.
things that make you
Right.
make you feel good,
Yeah.
because I feel that sex is something that is just it's freedom. You said
Yeah.
it's just supposed to be something that relaxes us and not feel like it's a chore or it's something wrong with it. But
So, so your original question was like, how do we not trigger our partners?
right.
Because okay, so one, we, the field of psychology in our world, we're really recognizing trauma, and I think that's great. But I also think that trauma and trigger have become a buzzword. So everything is not
Mm-hmm.
trauma, everything is not a trigger.
Mm-hmm.
um Now, if you say something and it upsets your partner, it doesn't necessarily mean it was a trigger,
Hmm.
because what we have to understand, a trigger is a result of trauma
Hmm.
that really hijacks the brain and the body
Hmm.
from the present to the past. And so when you're hijacked, because the brain doesn't know the difference between reality and imagination,
Hmm.
it thinks it's happening right then and there. That's what a trigger is. So sometimes when you see an overreaction to something,
Mhm,
that is the trigger.
mhm.
Not just because I get upset about it doesn't mean that I am triggered. It
Right,
just means I have a reaction to it.
right,
So when people are triggered as a result of trauma, we typically don't know our partner's triggers, and they don't know them either until
right.
they happen. So
Mm,
to try
yeah.
to walk around the triggers is like walking around a landmine, and you don't know when you're going to step on it. And
Mhm,
so that creates this kind of eggshell, walking on eggshells feeling in a relationship. And I
mhm,
don't know that you can really show up
mhm.
when you feel like you have to do that. So
Right.
that's the first thing. The second thing is that I think everybody comes into a relationship with their own baggage. It's about who you're going to get with to unpack it. And as long as you keep checking your bag at the, when you go to an airport and you check your bag,
Mhm.
what happens? It shows up where you show up, right?
Right, right.
As long as we keep checking our bags and not unpacking them, they're going to show up anywhere that we go. So whether you have trauma, which big T trauma or little T traumas, or you don't have what you think trauma, what constitute trauma to you.
Mhm.
We all have issues and we all show up, and they're all going to impact our partners, and our
Mhm.
partners are going to impact us. I think it's important for people to understand that relationships are about getting an opportunity to finish a growth, developmental growth. Phase, right?
Mhm.
So when we get into a relationship, even not just romantic relationships, although, those are the biggest that's going
Right.
to show,
Right.
but when we even get in friendships, all of those things, you're going to be a mirror for me in
Mhm.
the areas that I need to grow. And I'm going to be a mirror for you. So it's not about how do we not trigger our partner. I think that is about them getting the help that they need and doing the work that they're responsible for their triggers.
Mhm.
But I think care and co-regulation is important in a relationship.
Mhm.
But to try to tiptoe around that is going to create even more problems, because then I can't show up if I feel like you're too fragile.
Right.
And that's going to really impact our sex life.
Steve. You said a whole lot. I'm like, man, that is. I'm just listening to you. I'm like, oh,
If I feel like you're so fragile, what makes that's not going to be a turn on.
it's not. It
Yeah.
actually makes you decide to go
Yeah.
and do something else,
Now
even
I'm gonna
though,
care for
yeah.
you like a mother, and I don't want to sleep with my child.
Let me tell you. So I know that. I mean, we're talking about triggers and trauma.
Mhm.
Something else that kind of was a thought is just like individuals who do deal with like sexual trauma, or like how, like, let's just give an example. You have a male, because I know we talk a lot about like women being
Yeah,
molested and having just all and different experiences, but males also go through this
absolutely,
same
and it's
thing.
underreported.
That part,
Yeah.
like, it's okay.
Hmm.
So what is I just want to kind of know what kind of happens in that situation when you have a male that's actually, looked at women in
Hmm.
the sense of, you were supposed to be my example, you're supposed to be this mothering figure to me, but you took it to a whole nother level and you took advantage of me.
Yeah.
Like, how does it really play as far as how they connect relationship wise, and
Hmm.
how do they connect as far as intimacy with a woman?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna go back and then I'm gonna answer your question. I
Okay.
want to go back to that any trauma can impact our sex lives,
Hmm.
right? It doesn't have to be sexual trauma like sexual assault or molestation
Hmm.
or child sexual abuse. It doesn't have to be that
Right.
to impact our sex lives. We are a whole being. So trauma impacts our spiritual life, our emotional life, our mental life, and our sexual life.
Hmm.
And so it doesn't have to just be that. However, when we look at when we talk about childhood sexual abuse and or sexual assault, we typically associate that with women,
Hmm.
those who identify as women, and so then what happens is we leave out a whole population, and that
Hmm.
has to do with the myths that boys and men cannot be molested and or raped,
Hmm.
right? Because an erection is needed,
Right.
and that's the furthest thing from the truth.
Hmm.
They are, and they are perpetrated against by equally by men and women, and
Hmm.
the emotional impact is equal. So it doesn't matter if they were perpetrated against by a man or by a woman.
Right.
And so it impacts their ability to one trust, because especially if it happens as a child. When you have childhood sexual abuse, what happens is it shakes the very foundation of trust,
Hmm.
depending on how young it was. But when you have an adult and they have to then learn how to navigate their environment that they don't have any control over, and maybe let's say this, usually it happens within families,
Hmm.
they don't get to control, who shows up and who doesn't,
Right.
and have a say so. So they have to then adapt to an environment that they don't have any control over. So then you might see other kind of behaviors that show up. And it's not that they're being bad. It's not that they're being oppositional defiant. It's about them being adaptive in a place where they don't feel safe. And that shows up too
Hmm.
in their relationships
Hmm.
by not really trusting.
And that's what I was gonna say, the connection
Hmm.
between, whatever the relationship wants
Yeah.
to be,
Walls up.
yeah, there's
Hmm.
complete walls of, they don't really connect like it's I can connect this way because it's what I was taught, but
Right.
I'm not fully there.
Yeah.
And is there any way that that really can be changed if they
Absolutely.
still haven't like they didn't take care of it, they didn't talk about it when they were young, and now they're an adult and they've pretty much lived their like life in a certain way.
Mhm.
So now we're at 40, 50, 60 years old and it's like, okay, now we're learning that hey, it's okay to talk about these
Yeah.
things. Is and that just because you're a man, let's take away the masculinity, let's take away because you're
Right.
this is something that needs to be addressed. So you're still saying that it can be changed?
Absolutely. I believe in healing. So
Mhm,
it doesn't matter how old you are when you heal,
mhm,
it's when
mhm.
you start it. So yes,
And
they
if you
can
want it.
if you want it, right?
Mhm.
But also too, when we're talking about men, we haven't made healing spaces safe for men, right?
I
We talk
agree.
really bad about men who cry or show any emotions, right?
Girl, I
And so,
love a man that can cry. Boy,
right,
get on my shoulder.
but to a certain extent, because we've also been socialized that if they cry too much, then they're weak, right?
Right,
And
right.
so, but we haven't made a lot of spaces for men, particularly even Black men, to
Yes.
really to be able to express and explore their emotions.
Mhm.
So I think one, we need to do better at that.
Right.
Two, I think it's also important for them to be able to see other men go to therapy and get the help that they need, right?
Mhm,
Which
mhm.
is why I love like concepts of barbershop therapy, cigar lounge therapies, things
Right.
like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, but no, I agree. Thank you for that because I
Mhm.
think that that's something that is as we talk about stigmas.
Yeah.
That's a huge one, and it's got to go away. So going on the stigmas,
Mhm.
what's one stigma that you have heard over and over again that you're like, come on now, let's get over it?
That men want sex all the time.
No, they don't.
They don't. They don't, and that's not all that they think about. And they also want connection.
They, okay, I
They
agree
do.
with that.
They want connection.
I'm gonna go off the chart real quick. Is that true? Is that true? Is that what they want? Y'all don't see him in the back. Oh, he's agreeing. Yes, that's all. It's all true. But
Here's what I say. In my work, what I have noticed is that when men are involved in infidelity, it
mhm,
was never about the sex.
it's about the
It was
intimacy,
about the
connection.
intimacy and the connection and feeling appreciated and loved.
Mhm. I'm telling you right now, every man is like, yes, thank you. Finally, somebody's gonna say,
They also want to be needed and wanted,
right,
right? Like they're tired of doing all the initiating and being rejected.
right. Speaking of initiation and being rejected part, even let's talk about in the bedroom,
Mm.
like being able to actually, I personally don't have a problem with this, but for those who do, uh, being able to flip that mind, the woman being able to flip that mind, not feeling like, oh, I have to get mines first before
Okay.
you get yours.
Mm.
However, I will say, just growing up, I remember that it became an attitude. One of the reasons is because it so many say that. How do I want to put this? Well, I'm trying to be like nice, but it became a feeling of like
Are we
the
being nice or are we
males.
telling the truth?
Okay, we being. I'm telling the truth. Like men, at the point, like men, a lot of women were meeting men that were basically like getting theirs, and it was like, girl, you didn't get yours. I'm sorry for
Mhm,
that.
mhm,
To me, those are not emotionally mature men, but
mhm.
it also, I think that's
But I
kind of
think
where.
there's a lot of stuff under that.
What do you think it is?
So when you meet a man who says, "Imma get you better get yours because I'm not responsible for you not getting yours."
Mhm,
Well, two things. One, everyone is responsible for their own pleasure and they are
mhm,
responsible for their own orgasms.
mhm,
However, I also teach that chasing orgasms is problematic. That when you chase an orgasm, you become performative
mhm,
versus being engaged in the experience.
mm,
So with that being said, and because I am, and just even the research, the industry is seeing that we are seeing men younger and younger dealing with sexual dysfunction and sexual dissatisfaction. And a lot of that has to do with this performance that they do in the bedroom. A lot of pressure gets put on men to protect and take care of. Well, when you protect and take care of, and you're so worried about whether or not your partner is being pleased, it also takes you out of your body and into your head. So he's now not enjoying his pleasure because he's so focused on whether or not you, which then creates a level of anxiety that impacts erections. And so if he's like, you didn't get yours, and I mean, I'm done, because we do know, the sexual response cycle is that after men ejaculate, then they have a refractory period.
Right.
So,
which is how long is that?
It can be 1 minute to 2 days. It just really depends. So they don't go back to back unless they know how to um, withhold ejaculation. They can orgasm, but they withhold ejaculation. But most people don't know that those are two different things.
Yes, please break it down, because I'm looking at you and I'm like, wait, they can hold back their ejaculation, but they can have an orgasm?
So because of orgasm is an orgasm, ejaculation is a result of an orgasm.
Right.
But it doesn't. They're not the two. They're not the same thing. Just like we know that women can have orgasms and they can also have ejaculation by squirting, and those are two separate things. It's the same thing for men, but because they are usually back to back, we just associate it as one thing.
Okay, I'm like, hold on. I need to take a drink. This is real. Because I think for me, I'm very big on being receptive. Like, so it's important to me. Like, I'm going to please you just as much, because, and we shouldn't think about it. I think one of my situationships that uh, we pretty much, it was almost like a back and forth. Like, neither of us could perform, and it was like, are we compatible? And what I came up with the conclusion, and he agreed, was that we were so busy trying to please
the other
person that we kept, it wasn't working.
Yeah.
And then once we actually, communication is so important, and
communication is important, but what's more important is understanding.
Yes, and that's
because we're always communicating, even when we're not talking. And I think people think, oh, if I just say this, then it's going to make it okay. And that's not necessary. Communication isn't going to solve everything.
Right.
But understanding is more important than just communicating. Can you hear me? Can you understand it? Or are you waiting to, tell me your point of view?
And for us, it was more of the understanding part, and just making sure that, we really were making those steps. And so once that happened, hallelujah, things were better. But so you have couples that come to you, and so a big thing is just kind of, I would gather, would be, if they're coming to you, there's something that is missing. I know you're going to correct me, but this is remember, I'm just
good. No, I'm glad because you're not the only one who thinks that. So go ahead.
Right. So, something is missing in their relationship that's making it kind of go left instead of right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and for the most part, that is one of the reasons why people come in. The other thing is, which is unfortunate, because you don't take your car to the shop once it starts acting up.
You hold off for a while.
The thing, well, no, the thing is that you. I hope not.
Oh, that sounds like my break, but I don't know.
You take your car in to get an oil change before the engine blows up, right? And I wish that more couples would see therapy like that. That it's a maintenance thing versus oh shoot, now we gotta fix this. Right. However, couples come in on an average 7 years too late when a whole lot of damage has been done. If they could just only come in when they started thinking they were experiencing
Right.
Maybe a disconnection or um, not being able to learn how to do conflict resolution. Some of us don't know how to fight fair. And we think that we're not supposed to have fights and disagreements in our relationships.
Mhm.
Those are myths that also impacts our sex life because we think we're not in a good relationship because we're having disagreements. But you
Right.
have two different people with two different experiences and two different upbringings that come together. Why wouldn't you have disagreements?
Right.
You're a different person, I'm a different person. Why wouldn't we disagree?
Right.
And if we agreed on everything and we thought alike, one of us is unnecessary.
This is true. Like, yeah, you're right. I
Right?
mean, yeah,
And then
no.
it also plays into, you talk about intimacy, to have a partner who thinks differently from you, that challenge you on your thought process and your ability to be able to have debates is actually intellectual intimacy.
Mm, yeah.
We just focus on the sexual intimacy
Mhm.
when
Mhm.
there's so many other aspects of intimacy. There's emotional intimacy, there's mental intimacy,
Mhm.
there's spiritual intimacy, there's recreational intimacy,
Right.
and there's financial intimacy, and we just focus on sex.
Right. Because
And then we
everybody,
say, well,
that's
we
that
ain't
key word.
compatible.
Yeah. Because it's that key word, like,
Yeah,
this ain't working, so I'm gonna give
right.
up. Even with that, how do you think you can handle, or how should a person really handle being able to talk to their mate about and not feeling like they're intimidating when
Mm,
they say, I want more. And I don't care if it's sex, if it's the
mhm,
conversation, if it's like, hey, can you read this book for me so we can talk about it?
mhm,
Like, how
mhm.
can they uh get that relationship kind of spark in that situation? I don't know if I'm saying that
Well,
right.
let me ask you this, see.
Uh-huh.
Um, do you find it that you can show up in a relationship as your full authentic self when you can share everything with your partner?
Ask that one more time.
Do you feel like you can show up as your full authentic self when you can share everything with your partner?
Oh
Okay.
yes.
When I have to tiptoe around conversations,
Hmm.
I'm not going to show up as my full authentic self,
This
right?
is true. Yeah.
So I often ask people, what makes it more safe to share your body than to share your mind with your partner?
So, but wouldn't that bring more things that you're like not dealing with yourself?
Absolutely.
Because if
Absolutely.
that's what you feel, that your body is more of the importance,
Or you're
then
disconnected from your body and that makes it easy to share.
mm, let's go into that. Because I mean, honestly, I think that's a real thing that I don't think people really think about. Like, are
Absolutely.
you disconnected from your body? And I want to
It's
say,
easier for me to give you my body than to give you my mind.
right, and I've
Mhm.
been there where like there's a disconnect for me, and I'm just kind of like, it's kind of scary because it's like you're not connecting the two together, and there is, and I can't say that it can change and you can grow
Yeah.
from that
Mhm.
because there's that's all I am about now. Like
Mhm.
both are connecting together, and it's important to me. So can we talk more about like how that is possible to have that disconnect?
Well, it depends on, why you disconnected from your body.
Hmm.
Let's talk about like black women, right?
Hmm.
It has one being black hasn't always been safe in America to be in
Hmm.
our bodies,
Hmm.
so it's easy to disconnect from a black body.
Hmm.
Um, there's been war on women, right?
Hmm.
And our ability to control our sex and sexuality and have autonomy over what we'd like to, the choices we'd like to make over our bodies. So the war on women will actually have us disconnect from our body too.
Right.
um, the messages that we get about our body, right? We do a lot of body image shaming and things like that. And so
Hmm.
we don't necessarily like our bodies. And
Hmm.
so that can also have us disconnect. Abuse and trauma can also make us disconnect from our bodies. And
Hmm.
so then we end up having a unhealthy relationship with our bodies. And so it's easy to give that away than
Hmm.
it is to give our mind away. So I'm not going to share my thoughts and how I really feel with you because that's too intimate.
How can that be changed?
Well, one, definitely being in some type of therapy, some trauma informed therapy to work through that. And then two, again, I said earlier, relationships are about finishing developmental growth phase. And
Mhm.
that is being able to hold on to yourself and have conversations with people, even when it's not going to reflect back
Mhm.
what you want it to be. I always say if you try to control the outcome, you'll control the output. So if I'm afraid that you're not going to agree with what I share, then I won't share it.
Mhm.
And if I can't share what is most dear to me, then I can't show up in the relationship.
Right.
So intimacy, into me you see, ends up being a blockage in many of our relationships because although I want you to see me, I don't really want you to see me.
Right. That's deep. I just
So that's why we get in the bedroom, we cut off the lights.
Oh, yeah. Hey, I use LED lights. You gonna see me. You may not see me fully, but that's still kind of
Uh-huh.
guiding me. Thank you. So,
Mhm.
as we talk about just kind of like how to keep the sex alive, we have like, I think about a couple of things. Like I think of infidelity.
Mhm.
I think of people just getting bored.
Mhm.
I think like financial, all the
Mhm.
everything that no one wants to really still connect on that possibly brought you together.
Mhm.
Hopefully, in the beginning, is now different.
Mhm.
Um, how can they work on that? How can what are some things that they can do?
So which one we talking about? Infidelity or
I think let's go with what can they do. Let's not even talk about the infidelity because
Okay.
that's like a whole like
That's a whole
another
nother show.
that's a whole nother show, infidelity. But let's talk about how can they really start to begin to work on waking it up, making it go, bring that spark back.
If they ever had it.
Oh, I want to be. Hopefully, they had it at some point. They just didn't settle. But you know, a lot of
Well,
people.
you know what? Sometimes I think people get this spark mentality mixed up with like the chemical high
Mhm,
that you get in a new relationship. It's called NRE, new relationship energy.
mhm,
And that's a whole bunch of chemicals that's floating around, a whole lot of dopamine and serotonin that makes you feel really high in the new relationship, and those wear off.
mhm,
And
mhm.
I don't know that that's really chemistry as much as it's. I mean, anything you start doing new can feel fun.
Right.
Um, how do people get it back? Uh, one, both need to be invested in trying to get it back. That's key, right?
Mhm,
And approaching things with like a curiosity, right? I do a thing called red, yellow, green,
mhm,
where these activities are absolutely off the table. We list them as red.
mhm,
These yellow ones, I've never tried them before, but I think I might be interested, but maybe we only do that on our anniversary, whatever the case may be.
uh-huh,
And the green is this is a go, right?
mhm.
And having these conversations. They say sex begets sex. So when you are intimate and having sex, you tend to want to have more sex, especially if it's pleasurable.
Mhm.
If it's not, and that's a whole nother show too, right? When we talk about the we talk about the pleasure gap
Right.
between men and women,
Mhm.
right? Women are not as pleased in their sex lives as men are.
Right. Mhm.
And there's several reasons for that. And that has to do with one, we don't know how our bodies work.
Mhm.
And we don't know how our partners' bodies work. We
Mhm.
just,
Mhm.
and when you ask, how did you learn? Because did they tell you, who told you how your body works? And was it learning by?
Sex ed was real simple.
Yeah,
It
see?
was like, "Oh, you have a period. Oh,
Yeah.
and this is
And
happening to
STDs
you."
and
And
and it
yeah,
did not sound appealing
not at
at all,
all.
right? And
No.
they never said the word pleasure,
Correct. No,
right?
not at
And
all.
so teaching people how to enjoy pleasure first outside of the bedroom,
Mhm.
which then translates into the bedroom. If
Mhm.
you don't know how to sit down and really enjoy your food,
Mhm.
how do you and be present with your meal? How do you do that in the bedroom?
Right.
These are simple life hacks,
Mhm.
as TikTok would say, right? Like these are simple life things that we can do. Learning how to enjoy the joys of life
Mhm.
um, is important. How do we get it back? What's your turn ons? Have you shared those? What are your fantasies?
Mhm.
You know, our fantasies are our deepest fears
Mhm.
and our deepest desires.
Because if we enjoy it, do we want to keep doing it?
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
will people dislike me
Mm-hmm.
because or am I wrong for feeling
Yeah.
this? Yeah, there's so many things that
And a
go with
lot of
that. Yeah.
shame around
Mhm.
sex and sexuality. There's a lot of shame, and I think that plays a huge role in whether or not we have fun.
Right. I
Right?
mean, we have to think like even the word masturbation is
Yeah.
like, oh, you're doing what with your who,
Mm-hmm.
and it's and it's like no, and I think that's a part of like where we if we go back where we talked about knowing how to please yourself,
Yep.
like you have to be the one that gets that orgasm for you and understand how to
Mm-hmm.
get it. And I see nothing wrong with masturbation
Mm-hmm.
because it saves you from STDs and everything. No, I'm just joking. But it actually makes you it's a sense of comfortability when you actually come into meeting someone and you're able to connect in a different way because you're not like, oh well, I've been holding it in because of this. No,
Yeah.
I think it's a good thing, but
And the other thing is like, if you wouldn't want to make love to you,
why would the other
why would
person
someone else want to?
exactly like
And how are you going to show up?
right, right. And the whole thing too, even when we talk about let's talk about uh, oh my gosh, why oral sex?
Oh yeah.
You know, it's a big thing about that. And it's like, listen, you want him to taste you, you want him to know everything. Why can't you know the same thing? Like if you can't taste we've had this I had this joke with a friend and it's that's one of the big things that she always say, I'll taste myself. Shoot, I have no problem with it.
Right.
So I think it kind of adds to
Yeah.
that. What are other ways? That I just feel like there's so many things that people are scared to say.
Well, here's the thing. I think connection is key.
Hmm.
I think that if you ask me, like, what are 10 ways to increase your intimacy, people are looking for techniques, right? That
Because
makes you a
that's a
technician.
performance.
That makes you
Yeah.
a technician and a performer,
Hmm.
not a
Hmm.
lover,
Right. This is true.
right?
If you take that
So,
to that. Mhm.
so are we wanting to be technicians or are we wanting to be lovers? Or are we wanting to really enjoy pleasure? It really is
Mhm.
about enjoying the pleasures of life. When you go to a restaurant, I love this example. When you go to a restaurant and you're out on a date, can you remember the last time you went on a date and it was a really great dinner date? No, you see your smile right now? Okay. So so you go and you remember the ambiance?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
do.
okay.
Mhm.
Do you remember the conversation?
A little bit, a
Okay,
little
all right.
bit.
How was the food?
It wasn't that good.
It wasn't that good.
It wasn't
Okay,
that
but the
good.
date was okay?
But the date was okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just the intimate touch
Yeah.
and everything with it, and it was like it was very simple, like a handhold, or
Mhm.
like it wasn't like and just kind of the snicker and everything
Yeah.
like that. So yeah.
Yeah, so you remember the pleasure of that, where you feel that right now in your body?
Mm, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Mm,
Did you eat dessert?
no.
You
Mm-mm,
didn't eat dessert.
no
Okay,
dessert.
perfect. If we go into our sex lives with that mentality, we're going to have amazing sex. We are going to enjoy the ambiance, the touches. Um, you may or may not enjoy you said the food was okay, but
Mm,
it didn't spoil the date, right? But
no,
the
not at all.
experience was amazing.
Hmm.
And the dessert, you didn't even have dessert, right?
Right.
Yet we say great sex is only when you have an orgasm. Orgasms is dessert.
Hmm.
Sometimes you're going to have them, sometimes you're not,
Hmm.
and that's
Hmm.
okay. What was the experience like?
If you're connected with that person,
Mhm.
amazing
Exactly.
every time.
So it's the simple things like that that
Hmm.
translate right into your bedroom. So when you say, what are some things? Some of these things we're already doing in our lives. We're just not. translating them into our bedrooms. And some of the things that we're doing in our bedrooms is not equally translating into our lives. But I do believe that how we show up in our bedroom usually is about how we show up in the world. So if you can't ask for what you want in your bedroom, you're probably not being able to ask for what you want in your life, at your career, with your friendships.
You just gotta be basically, you say you gotta be all the way around just.
Yeah.
That's real.
Yeah. We try to separate who we are as a
Mhm.
sexual being from everybody, from everything else.
Mhm.
But all of it is together. Who you are as a spiritual person, who you are as a sexual person, a sensual person. It's one.
You're one person.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I got one more question because I think we are on wrap up time, and I'm actually going to look for this question because I think the person really wants an answer. Really, really want an answer. So let's see. Monica from California, Utah. No, I'm just joking. No, let's see. I'm gonna look it for it really quick, and then okay, let's go backwards real
Okay.
quick. So we talked about like the performance part and how individuals actually they want to put it's all about performance and a person needs to get people are responsible for pleasing themselves and one person wants to get it before this person. How can how can that be adjusted?
The performance part?
The part where it's not about what it is a performance thing because
Yeah.
if you're saying do me and or this or that, it is a performance. But how can a person be comfortable in trusting that I feel like you answered this already as I'm talking about it, but just trusting the process and just really enjoying it and not making let me do me first and if you get yours then
Okay. So let me say that there's a level of narcissism that has to play out in your sex life. Like you have to be really about yours and confident in who you are as a sensual being.
Mhm.
And when you bring that to the bedroom and you're not worried about whether or not your partner is going to like you or like what they see, and now you're in your head and not in your body. When we get in our head and we get out of our bodies, we turn down our ability to experience sensuality at its fullest. Sensuality is our five senses, how you experience life through taste, touch, smell, what you hear. And so, if you're not in your body, because our skin is what takes in our senses. If you're not in your body and you're in your head, you're going to miss a whole lot of pleasure. And so, if I'm in my head and worried about you, and I'm not saying that I got to get mine, you better get yours, not like that, but I am responsible for my own pleasure, which means I have to take an active role in this. We no more pillow princess where you're just laying there, right? You have to be you have to be actively involved in your pleasure. And your partner has to be actively involved in their pleasure. And when that comes together, it's a beautiful thing.
Right. And something as you're talking, I'm thinking to myself, I'm feeling like this was more based off oral sex.
Listen, let's reciprocate.
Yes.
Right? Stop laying there getting yours for 30 minutes and then giving him his 3 minutes. Let's make it reciprocal.
Right.
There's equality is important. Quality and equality is important.
Right.
Why wouldn't you want your partner to?
I think
But I'm just saying in general, right? I know you saying like that ain't my issue, but I'm saying
but I'm actually
like,
I was
why
about
would
to get
you?
a little deeper. I was like, it's something about like to know the male's body is reacting
Yeah.
to what you're doing to it,
Mhm.
just as it excites them. Like
Yeah,
it gives you a sense of excitement,
absolutely.
and you want that. I'm like all away from the
But
phone.
but but here's the thing. Sometimes when we don't want to give our partner something, we're not talking about it like I just don't want to do that. It's
Mhm.
more or less a, a reflection of the dynamics in the relationship.
Mm.
So if we've been beefing all week,
Do I really
do I
want
really
to?
want
Yeah.
to engage like that, right? Um, and so sometimes the way we have sex and enjoy intimacy has to do with what's going on in the relationship.
Mm. So you have to definitely fix that before
I don't
you
know
do
that you have
that.
to fix it, but you
Uh-huh.
have to be willing to be working on it.
Okay. Okay. When do you say, you know what, this ain't? I done did therapy with y'all. We done talked about this, and
Mm.
you finally say, you know what, I give like this is it.
When do I, as a therapist, say that? I don't. I am of the belief that people deserve to have the relationships they want.
Right.
And
So
so until they say, I've had enough of this, we're going to keep working on whatever you're working on. But if you're not really working on it, I might call you out
okay,
on
I was going
it.
to say
It's like, you
like,
know what? We've been doing this for 6 months now, and I don't really see you doing the work. Is this what you want to continue to do?
mhm,
But I do, but I check in with my couples all the time. Like, how do you feel like you're progressing?
mhm,
And sometimes it's hard for them to see their progression because a lot of times we focus on what isn't
mhm,
happening,
mhm,
right? If we change our lens, um, that's important. You know how you go to the optometrist and they're fitting you for like your prescription, and they say, "Is this is A better or B better?" Click click.
mhm,
Is C better or D better? Click, click.
mhm,
And sometimes in our relationships, we need to do some click clicking.
mhm,
Our our lens are dirty.
mhm, mhm.
Um, they are tainted by experiences, and so we need to clean them up and start unpacking some of these bags
Mhm.
and put some new insight into our relationships, because the one thing we know is that whatever issues you're having in your relationship, the common denominator is you. So those are the areas that you need to be working on.
Mhm. Okay. So being that you take in like every energy and everything, what do you do for your self care to help you
Oh
out?
yes. What do I do? Okay, one, I love baths. I love teas. Right. I
Mhm.
drink a lot of herbal teas. I love to read. I'm always reading, and not just like self-help books, because those kind of books will make you, I should be doing this, I should be looking like this.
Mhm.
But just books, novels and things, black author novels that I can escape in.
Mhm.
I love spending time with my husband, my kids, my grandkids, spa days. And I love quietness. I love to binge watch TV
Mhm.
where I don't have to do a whole lot of thinking.
That's
So
always
that
nice.
fills me up.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you so much for being here
Yes.
today. I think that I feel like 1 hour is not long enough. Like there's so many
Well,
questions,
I'll
and
have to come back.
yes, yes, please. Or I may have to just do a panel, like where we really get into it, and it'd be just you and the males, and then we do
Okay.
the females,
There we
like
go.
so that because I think that's a big thing. Is like you were saying, males aren't they don't get to talk the way
Yeah.
they need to. They
Yeah.
don't get the love that they need.
Yep.
So and it comes out in different ways that females be like, oh no, red
Yeah.
flag.
Yeah.
So I wait for that day. I'm
Okay.
excited. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And thank you to all of you who watched. This was Expertise Friday. I hope that you guys come back next Friday. Happy Valentine's Day. Make love to yourself if you have to. Just enjoy. Sorry, that was awful. But enjoy February and everything about it. And we also got to remember, I mean, yes, we black all year long, but happy Black History Month also. See you guys next time. Stay random. Bye.